Calaroga Shark Media.
Very busy one today. Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news from Daytona Beach. The new Grand Marshal of the 68th running of the Daytona 500 on Sunday, February 15th, will be Nate Bargatze. Nate's publicist stayed on top of Daytona with this fancy press release. The Grammy Award-winning #1 touring comedian in the world and two-time Saturday Night Live host is now making the jump to the silver screen this spring with his first feature film. He created, co-wrote, produced, and stars in the family-friendly comedy The Breadwinner for TriStar Pictures, scheduled to be released theatrically on May 29, 2026. None of that mentions Daytona. The press release also gets in, widely known as the nicest man in stand-up, Bargatze has become one of America's most beloved comedic voices, blah, blah, blah. Is he widely known as the nicest man in stand-up? I mean, he seems nice. I'm sure he's lovely, but is he widely known as that? I just threw the phrase into Google. The Atlantic in 2021 had the headline, Nate Bargatze's the nicest man in stand-up. Now, I've never met Nate, but again, I think that Jeff Foxworthy is very, very nice. It seems everything's going back to that article, and they are running with it. Anyway, we are told that his clever and wildly relatable storytelling has made him a favorite among fans of all ages, qualities that align perfectly with the excitement, tradition, and national spotlight of the Daytona 500. Frank Kelleher is president of the Daytona International Speedway, and he said, Nate Bargatze's nationwide popularity, family-friendly humor, and authenticity embody the same spirit with a style that resonates with all. He'll bring a memorable spark to the command, amplifying the emotion and excitement of one of the biggest moments in motorsports. No, the publicist got it done. They want us to know his most recent Netflix special, Your Friend Nate Bargatze, is currently the most watched stand-up special on Netflix in the past 52 weeks. His Big Dumb Eyes World Tour set a record for biggest one-year gross by a comedy performer in history and has broken over 40 total arena attendance records. In addition to giving the command to fire up the engines, Nate will also participate in a fan Q&A session in the fan zone that morning. I did Daytona a few times. I had a hot pass from SiriusXM. I'll wait till Daytona Day to tell those stories because we have a lot to get to. Nate did win the Grammy, and as part of the story they're selling us this week, during the pre-show premiere ceremony, Nate was lounging on the couch under a blanket when he heard that he won his first Grammy. A video happened to be rolling as this announcement happened. Nate is covering his hands in disbelief. He seems so shocked that he doesn't even say anything during the video. After the ceremony, Nate posted the video that shows him reacting. Good thing somebody was rolling a camera. Nate said, I am honestly blown away and as surprised as the video shows. Thank you to all that have ever been to a show or watched a special. Thank you to every comedian that's been part of my life. I love stand-up comedy so much and so excited to see how stand-up is exploding. Thank you to my family who has been so supportive of me, especially my beautiful wife, Laura, and our wonderful daughter, Harper. God has truly blessed me with so much love and support around me. Now, I don't want you guys to think that I don't like Nate Bargatze. I just overreact to press releases, and boy, the publicists earned their money on that one. What a yarn they are selling there. I'll give you an early hint for this week's comedy stock market. Dave Chappelle. Dave's going to return to Minnesota to, quote, stand with a community. He'll be doing a performance at the Grand Casino Arena on February 16th. The announcement describes Dave's decision as an act of solidarity with a community, quote, at the center of events that should unite all Americans in defense of civil rights, human dignity, and the principles we claim to hold sacred. Amen, Dave. The press release says Dave's appearance reflects a, quote, decades-long commitment to showing up for communities in crisis and using comedy as a force for connection and solidarity. I like this move a lot. Now, interestingly, in July of 2022, Dave was scheduled to perform at First Avenue in Minneapolis. That's the place Bruce Springsteen showed up at last week. That show was moved to the Varsity Theater in an apparent reaction to Dave's transphobic material. You may also recall that in 2020, is it that long ago? Netflix released a special titled 846, which featured Dave Chappelle talking about race in the wake of George Floyd's death. 846 refers to the length of time George Floyd was pinned to the ground by a Minneapolis police officer. Dave's announced a couple other shows. I'll tell you about those later in the week. One with Jon Stewart and a second one in San Francisco this weekend, but we'll get to that. Bill Maher shot back at Dave Chappelle. On Friday's Real Time, Bill Maher asserted that he was right to mock Dave Chappelle for suggesting Saudi Arabia has freer speech than the United States. Maher said, Dave Chappelle lashed out at me last month because I called him out for saying there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than here. Well, I was right. What he said was stupid. Maher argued that the United States is a far different place than Saudi Arabia regarding free speech. Quoting Bill Maher, if you don't believe me, try opening a lesbian art gallery there or wearing a t-shirt that says Jesus is the one true God. Ricky's right, meaning Ricky Gervais. Celebrities don't know about the real world. I feel terrible. I'm a terrible, terrible host. I forgot to tell you guys for 2 days I meant to tell you this when I recorded the Sunday Grammy segment anyway. Gianmarco Soresi released a short 14-minute set. It is on YouTube. It is called Shelf Life Volume 2. I feel awful. The publicist sent that over. I knew in advance, and I just forgot to actually voice the story. Sorry, publicist. You know I love you. You know I love Gianmarco. Gianmarco has been named a Deadline comic set to break out in 2025. I think that happened. And he's been named by me 2026 Comedian of the Year. I wrote that back to the publicist, and she was like, wait, who said that? I'm like, oh, I did. She encouraged me to keep doing it. All right, let's hook that up with some views. Shelf Life Volume 2. Jackie Fabulous has a new special on Hulu today. In the special titled You Can Leave, Jackie Fabulous tackles topics ranging from ex-husband and diet pills to menopause and what people do that drive you nuts. Also out on Hulu today, Chris Spencer's new special Goat Adjacent, presented by Kevin Hart's Heartbeat. Spencer touches on everything, from marriage and family to aging, race, and his Jamaican roots. Some More has announced a Netflix special, that one called Chandelier Fly. That'll be out February 17th. So it looks like Netflix is starting to roll specials out again because Cat Williams is out on the 10th. Tuesday specials are back, baby. Some More's special, Chandelier Fly, filmed at the Garden Theater in Detroit. She shares her takes on untimely death, celebrity scandals, and cell phone companies learning to mind their business. David Letterman will executive produce a Paul Schafer documentary. It is titled appropriately, Say Hello to Our Good Friend Paul Schafer. David Letterman in a statement said Paul Schafer is a show business friend who became a real friend, a comedic partner whose quickness and timing saved me night after night, a composer, arranger, and performer with endless range. His vast knowledge and list of collaborators in music make him a living rock and roll Hall of Fame. There's no one more worthy of an examination of his life and work. You may recall, Paul Schafer was the sidekick on Late Night with David Letterman, which launched in 1982. We just missed the anniversary. I forgot to mention it. Paul was the leader of the world's most dangerous band. Then, in 1993, after those meanies at NBC gave The Tonight Show to the worst person who ever lived, Jay Leno, Dave headed over to CBS to host The Late Show. Paul went with him, and Paul was the leader of the CBS Orchestra. Paul Schafer said, any contribution I've been lucky enough to make to the world of music and comedy has only been possible thanks to my working alongside David Letterman. That's why Worldwide Pans joining to help tell my story is a dream I cannot wait to share with all of you. Conan O'Brien returns to host the Oscars on Sunday, March 15th, 7 East, 4 West. It'll be live on ABC and Hulu. Last year's Oscars were very well received, and the reason for today's news story is the producers want us to know 100% of the writers and producers are back. Full writing team is back, and plus they added former Conan writer Todd Levin. Pandora has settled with comedians in a legal dispute over spoken word content licensing. 9 comedians and their heirs, including George Lopez, Louis Black, and the estates of Robin Williams and George Carlin, had been fighting since 2022 to increase the royalties paid when their comedy is streamed on Pandora. There has been a confidential settlement. The comedian's lawyer said, we settled amicably. Mystery Science Theater 3000 being revived again. I stumbled across this on my own as a civilian. I wasn't even doing show prep. I was just watching YouTube, and I saw the announcement for the Kickstarter. They want to produce 4 new episodes. The Kickstarter in the first 24 hours generated $1.17 million. The original goal of the Kickstarter was to raise $20,000 in celebration of the 20th anniversary of Riff Tracks. Shout Studios now owns the rights to MST3K. Shout has teamed up with Riff Tracks to produce new episodes of the show that will see Michael J. Nelson, Kevin Murphy, and Bill Corbett return both in front and behind the screen. The 4 movies that will be featured will be revealed over the course of the campaign. Nelson, Corbett, and Murphy have been performing under the Riff Tracks banner since 2006. They often do Riff Tracks live screenings, so it's nice to see that they're back involved in the MST3K verse. There was that weird Netflix season out there. I forget that ever happened. Let's get back to the main continuity. MST3K launched on a Minneapolis UHF station in 1988. Joel Hodgson previously revived the show via Kickstarter campaign in 2015. Was it that long ago? Seasons 11 and 12 aired on Netflix. It's 10 years since the Netflix version? No way. I would have guessed like 3. Wow. And then there was a 13th season on the online streaming platform, the Gizmoplex. Totally missed that. Eddie Murphy's son and Martin Lawrence's daughter are having a baby. Eric Murphy and Jasmine Lawrence announced the news. They posted, "Thank you, Jesus, for the greatest gift." One person commented, "Having Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence as your godparents is life." Another comment said, "That baby going to be talented and funny as hell." All right, an item on Gossip Corner. I'm not playing the song because I do want to be serious here. I'm seeing this on a lot of social media. There's an alleged Ghislaine Maxwell email asking famous sitcom star and comedian. So think of a famous comedian who had a sitcom. So whoever you're imagining now, apparently Ghislaine invited famous sitcom star and comedian to the island. The email was shared as a screenshot in a Reddit community and has gone viral. In this supposed email, Ghislaine Maxwell writes to Jeffrey Epstein, also, famous sitcom star and wife are going to be sailing around St. T 26/27. Can I organize for them to come to the island for lemonade? Jeffrey Epstein writes back, yes. There is no proof that the famous comedian accepted the lemonade invitation or dinner or had ever been to the island. That's just out there. Jon Stewart's name does appear in the Epstein files. On Monday's Daily Show, Jon said, of course, to get out of the story, I'm also in the files. We all searched our names, right?
You guys didn't search your name? All right. Well, I know. Whatever. I am in the files. All right. This is actually true. I take you to the scene. It is midnight, August 29th, 2015. Jeffrey Epstein lies wide awake, his mind turning with ideas. He jots a quick note to a producer named Barry Josephson saying, I suggested to Woody. Y'all know which Woody, right? It's the Epstein files. It ain't Harrelson. All right. Or the cowboy from Toy Story. You know which Woody we're talking about. Quote, I suggested to Woody that he do an exclusive new stand-up routine for either Apple TV or Amazon. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein always had his finger on the pulse of what America was clamoring for in 2015. But Barry Josephson, thinking like the out-of-the-box television professional that he was, pitched this idea. This is true. Quote, make a true biographical experience with his stand-up being the capper. Somebody like Jon Stewart could host/narrate the biographical part. Excuse me? I am offended. Somebody like Jon Stewart? Or Jon Stewart? My point is, do I have the offer, or is this an audition?
With the big document dump, all the late-night hosts have weighed in. Jon Stewart said there have been consequences for none of these dudes. They've been on the plane, they've been on the island, they've been to his house, they've given him creepy cards with pubic hair. They've been accused by a multitude of women of multitude of wrongdoings, and nothing has happened to any of them. I gotta be honest, I'm just not sure anyone's going to be held accountable for any of this. Oh, except Prince Andrew. Oh, Prince Andrew, stripped of the title Prince. Ooh, such a penalty. I guess here I'll plug, we've been talking about that a lot on Palace Intrigue. Palace Intrigue, I'm the writer for that, and we talk about the royal family every day, and Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson are keeping me quite busy. Back to comedy. Stewart said, look, man, we always knew that the people at DOJ releasing these documents weren't on a fact-finding mission. They were running interference, and the guy they're running interference for seems very satisfied with these results. Jimmy Kimmel.
I think we've done like 800 or 900 Monday shows. I don't know that we've ever had more madness to go through. There's so much. I'll start with what we know. On Friday morning, the ironically titled Department of Justice released about half of the Epstein files. They were supposed to release all of them on December 19th of last year. That obviously didn't happen. They claimed they needed time to redact the names of the victims, but whether intentionally or as a result of incompetence or a combination of both, they released thousands of files that did not have the names or photos of many of the victims redacted, but they did do a pretty decent job of redacting the names of the victimizers. There are many disturbing accounts of questionable activity in emails, notes, text messages, etc., and about a lot of famous people, including Bill Gates, Steve Bannon, Richard Branson, and, of course, Donald Trump. It would seem that some other famous people, including Elon Musk and Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, may not have been telling the whole truth about their interactions with Jeffrey Epstein. It is clear that Prince Andrew is royally which is... You know, it's a term you hear a lot, but rarely when it is literally true. And most of all, it is so bananas that the guy who's in charge of releasing all these files and redacting all this evidence is Donald Trump's own personal defense attorney. You know, when Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts of fraud, Todd Blanche was his lawyer. Now Todd Blanche is the gatekeeper to the Epstein files. And the woman who could give us clarity on who did what, Ghislaine Maxwell, is now doing yoga in a country club detention center because Todd Blanche moved her to one for reasons that he still hasn't explained to anyone. And then there's all this other stuff going on. Busting into the election headquarters in Georgia, arresting journalists like Don Lemon, who is here with us tonight, suddenly shutting down the Kennedy Center for 2 years, calling for nationalized elections, Trump suing the government he runs for $10 billion. My head is spinning. I guess that's the point, but my God, remember when Trump was threatening to invade Greenland? That was not even 2 weeks ago. We're living in dog years now. And it's only going to get nuttier now that this new batch of Epstein files is out. The Distractomatic is cranked all the way up.
Stephen Colbert did a lengthy monologue. Here are excerpts from it. I have made some edits to this for pacing.
Because on Friday morning, the Justice Department released its largest batch of Epstein documents, which totals over 3 million pages. 3 million is a lot of pages. And it's 3 million pages of just terrible stuff. Folks out there are still slogging through all the files, but they implicate a who's who of powerful men, including everyone from tech titans to Wall Street power brokers. Yes, there's one prominent guy who is in there prominently because President Donald Trump is mentioned more than 1,000 times. And the New York Times found 5,300 files with references to Trump and more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, and Mar-a-Lago. 38,000 references. That seems low, frankly. Obviously, this is the biggest story imaginable. But for some reason, it isn't. What is detailed in those 3 million pages are allegations of some of the cruelest, most depraved crimes against women and kids involving some of the most powerful men on planet Earth.
Seth Meyers said, we're living in MAGA's warped world where everything is upside down and nothing matters except who has power and who does not. They hail violent January 6th rioters as heroes and call peaceful protesters domestic terrorists. The government rounds up children and families and citizens and claims they're going after the worst of the worst, while at the same time they cover up for wealthy and powerful elites named in the emails of a guy who was actually the worst of the worst. Late Nighter points out that even Saturday Night Live was mentioned in the Epstein files. Some quick hits there. In 2016, the day after SNL aired a cold open in which Alec Baldwin's Donald Trump was visited by John Goodman's Rex Tillerson and Beck Bennett's Vladimir Putin, Epstein appears to have emailed a Variety article about the sketch to billionaire Tom Pritzker. In 2018, Fred Armisen portrayed Michael Wolff. Epstein filed off an email to the real Wolff with his review. SNL was great. Late Nighter recaps several other SNL mentions in the files. And from the Washington Post, Donald Trump told some jokes. The Washington Post tells us Trump was addressing the Alfalfa Club. Some members of the club are known to be in opposition to the president. The president's jokes included, and of course he told them better than I will, so many people in the room I hate, most of you I like. Who in the hell thought this was going to happen? The president joked he might have to cut the speech short because he needed to watch the invasion of Greenland, joking, we're not going to invade Greenland, we're going to buy it. It's never been my intention to make Greenland the 51st state. I want to make Canada the 51st state. Greenland will be the 52nd state. Venezuela can be the 53rd. Apparently, the president pointed to Kevin Warsh, nominee to be the next Fed chairman. The president joked, if he doesn't lower interest rates, I'm suing his ass off. Trump took a beat for timing and tagged it with, I'm kidding. Later in the day, the president was asked by reporters about the comments. The president explained, it's a roast. It's a comedy night. Apparently, the president joked that he thought Condoleezza Rice would be the first female president, and his joke, never in a million years would I've thought Joe Biden would beat her to it. The president also told reporters, I had the nastiest, most vicious joke about John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. If you think I'm going to tell that joke, you can forget it. I'm going to kiss his ass for a long time. That's your comedy news for today. Oh, boy. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.